Good afternoon, New York Comic Con. How you doing this afternoon? I want to welcome you to our panel. We are super excited you're here. My name is Mark Thompson. I narrate a lot of the Star Wars audiobooks, so I'm excited to be here for you. Before we get things started, we are currently recruiting for the Resistance. So I have some test questions to see if there are any potential recruits out there. If you know the answers to any of these questions, please raise your hand and you'll receive a prize. All right. First question. Tell me Vi Marati's code names. Okay, I saw you first. Yes, do you know the other one? Yes! He gets a prize and you're joining the Resistance. All right, second question. What is Poe Dameron's call sign? Yes, over here? You got it, black one, right over there. And last but not least, what is Admiral Akbar's favorite drink at Starbucks? Anyone? Yes, right here? It's a frap! That's right, very good. Congratulations. General Organa will give you your instructions after this panel. All right, so we're going to get things started. You're going to meet some amazing authors. You're going to hear some incredible things about some upcoming projects. But first, for a very special treat, we're going to give you a live reading of a section of the new novel, Resistance Reborn, okay? This starts off with Poe Dameron and Leia meeting, and they're trying to rebuild the Resistance. Leia, a voice called. She looked up to find Poe Dameron heading her way at a steady clip. Commander, she greeted Poe as he approached. He flushed brightly. He ran a hand through his thick, dark curls and dipped his chin, chagrined. General, he amended his greeting with a nod. Sorry for the informality, just glad to see you. I'm glad to see you too, Poe. She hadn't really meant to correct him, just remind him that they were here in front of potential new leadership and that they should set an example. Walk with me and tell me what we have. He walked her through the hangar, pointing as they went. The two pilots there you know from Black Squadron, Jessica Pava and Suralinda Javos. The woman with them is ex-Imperial officer Tiza Naj. They found her on Ratatak after fighting in the death pits. The woman was imposing, unusually tall and rippling with what seemed to be hard-won muscle. She wore a one-shouldered jumpsuit that looked like it had been stitched together from a mixture of animal hides and discarded armor. Her exposed arm displayed an elaborate stretch of short slashing lines that had been cut into her dark skin from shoulder to elbow. And below the elbow, she wore a leather bracer. Her thick hair was dyed blood red, and she held it back in dreadlocks that trailed down her back. Leia stifled an incredulous laugh. That warlord is ex-Imperial? So they say, Poe said. She was an officer in the Imperial Navy, some sort of genius strategist involved in the Battle of Jakku. But when that went sideways for the Empire, she was assumed dead on the Ravager. Leia pressed her lips together, thinking. Well, she looks more like a warrior, not a strategist. But perhaps I shouldn't judge by looks alone. If she dropped off New Republic scopes that thoroughly and was able to rise to power on Ratatak, she's probably both. Who else? Princess Leia? An excited feminine voice cut in. Both Leia and Poe turned. Zay Versio beamed at them and stepped forward to shake Leia's hand. It's good to finally meet you in person, Zay, Leia said, greeting the young pilot. Where's Shriv? Over here, a blue-skinned Duros said, joining them. His skin looked sallow under the cave lights, and lines ran like rivers under his large red eyes. He swiped a hand over his noseless face and grinned through thin, almost non-existent lips. Good to see you again, General. How was your mission? Leia inquired. Well, we survived, Shriv said laconically. But I did get a rash in an unmentionable place that still hasn't cleared. Don't suppose you have some kind of cream for that? Leia gave him a grave look. I'm sure someone in medical can fix you up. And I could use a nap and some food. I hear they've got fruit here and meat. Is it true, or did we arrive too late for all the good stuff? The Twi'leks have been very generous. There's plenty to go around. Sweet! Shriv rubbed at his face and stifled a yawn that threatened to crack his jaw. Then I'll excuse myself. I really gotta fix up this rash. Did you find anyone, Zay? Leia asked once Shriv had wandered off. The young girl nodded. Over at the civilian transport. I think you'll be pleased. They made their way over, Zay filling in with small talk about her and Shriv's mission. We looked everywhere, she said, sounding exasperated. Most of the leads were dead ends, and some of the people we were trying to find were, well, they were dead. More dead people on our list than alive. Zay's face clouded over. And a handful that have just disappeared. Disappeared, Poe chimed in, expression concerned. Maz told me something similar. What does it mean? Zay asked. The First Order, most likely. If we know about these potential allies, so do they. They're just getting to them first. There was a low hum of chatter among the group that broke off as Leia approached. A man separated from the small crowd, and Leia's brows raised in disbelief. This is... Zay began. I know who this is, Leia murmured. General Riken. Thank you. And now, let's get our authors up here and our panel moderator. Please welcome the creator of Her Universe, the voice of Ahsoka Tano, Ashley Eckstein.
Hello! One more round of applause for Mark Thompson, everyone. How incredible is he? And actually, please give a huge round of applause to Mike Siglain, the creative director for publishing for Lucasfilm.
And tech support.
And currently tech support, because they don't trust me with computers.
You're good to go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you guys for that warm introduction. And wow, I need an apple box because I am really short. There we go. Okay, we're going to do that. Wow, thank you so much for coming to this panel today, Journey to the Rise of Skywalker. And I'll tell you what, I am here as a fan. I am so ready for the Rise of Skywalker. How about you guys? Well, I'm literally counting down the days, but hopefully this panel will help because we're going to talk about new titles, upcoming titles, some titles that are just released that fill in the gap between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker and about that year or so time gap in between. So we have a lot to cover, and I am going to call the amazing panelists, our amazing authors, to the stage. So please help me welcome Justina Ireland. Next, we have Rebecca Roanhorse. Next, we have Ethan Sachs. Next, we have Kevin Shinnick. Next, we have Delilah Dawson. And last but not least, we have from the Lucasfilm Story Group, Matt Martin. And Mark Thompson as well. One more round of applause for Mark. Okay, are you guys excited?
Yeah!
Now my goal is, see this panel, they know things. So if I may just be the voice of Ahsoka, but sometimes I'd like to think that I have the Force. So you will tell us all the secrets you know.
I like how many Ahsokas are out there.
I know! I see so many Ahsokas. If you are
Everybody
representing
stand
Ahsoka
up. If you're
today,
Ahsoka, stand up. Let's see you.
Yes!
Yeah!
I love it!
Beautiful.
So much Ahsoka love. And I will tell you, me standing up here is absolutely not a spoiler. I know nothing about Episode 9. I know as much as you guys do. I am just up here as a fan and so excited. But Justina, we're going to start with you. We want to talk about Spark of the Resistance. And, in this book, it stars Rey, Poe, and Rose. And that's really a trio that, we haven't seen much, and they haven't gone on a mission together before. So was that daunting to create that group dynamic?
Yes. I mean, there is always this tiny, loud voice in the back of your head that's like, don't screw it up, don't screw it up. You're screwing it up, and now you're screwing it up even worse. So when I wrote my first Star Wars book, The Lando's Luck, it was like a part of Lando we hadn't seen, right? It was something, but this is smack dab in between the movies, and these are characters we all know and we've seen in action. So yeah, it was a little daunting. So I added porgs because porgs make everything better.
Yes, they do. I have to agree. But okay, so there's also, it's the planet Minfar. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Okay, and there are scary giant creatures on that planet?
Yeah, so this is like a previously unknown part of the space because the galaxy is vast and unexplored. And so they get an emergency call and they go to this planet Minfar where they find that there's this population there called the Zixen, which are basically murder rabbits because no one lets me use Ewoks, which are everyone's favorite murder bears. So I was like, let's pick a different animal. But the planet is, of course, overrun with these threats to this population there. And then all of a sudden, the First Order shows up, which is yet another threat and one that they don't know how to handle.
Okay, so the Zixun, it sounds like the scary monsters in the Zixun, they go at it.
They eat the Zixun, yeah.
Okay.
It's tragic.
All right, that must have been fun to write.
It was a lot of fun. It's a kid's book, so you want to have some fun. You want to make sure that your readers who don't necessarily like to read have enough to keep the pages turning. So there's a lot of action, a lot of banter. It's just a really fun book, and it's just a really fun way to kind of revisit the characters we haven't seen in a while.
Okay, so you also got to create your own villain.
I did.
Yeah, so tell us about this villain because you have a military background. So was this inspired by anyone?
It is. So Brandon Fitz is a First Order officer, and he's a combination of every commanding officer I've ever had to work with. So he has all the bad habits. He's conceited and self-involved, and he's worried more about his own personal glory than like the mission as a whole, which is one of the reasons why he's part of the First Order, because they're the bad guys, right? So yeah, it was actually a lot of fun to write the First Order scenes too, because I do think it's nice to see how those groups, the First Order versus our Resistance heroes, balance one another.
Okay. Actually, I have a question any panelist can answer. Is it more fun to write for the Resistance characters or the First Order characters? Good guys or bad guys to write for?
Yeah.
Yeah, anyone.
She said it was open to all. Answer question.
Well, it's like when you're getting like action figures and you set them up and then you bash them against each other. We do that.
Yeah.
So it's fun to have both because then they bash more.
But it's research.
All research.
Professional. We are.
If you
trained
check my
professionals.
taxes, it's all research.
I have deducted so many Legos.
Okay, well, Justina, what is the overall message and theme from Spark of the Resistance?
It's really about how you can't start a fire without a spark.
Yeah.
And this comes from higher. Otherwise, you're just dancing in the dark. It's Bruce Springsteen, guys.
Bruce Springsteen is the Force.
My husband is laughing at me because I don't know song lyrics. So I'm like, uh-huh, all right. Awesome. Well, definitely it's out now, right?
Yes, it came out yesterday. You can find it at your finer retailers everywhere. And I will be signing copies tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. in the Disney booth on the show floor.
Congratulations. Round of applause for Justine Ireland. That's so cool. And it's cool that you can finally talk about it. It's out.
I know. I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to be talking about anymore. It's all secrets.
Yes. Okay, so next we have Rebecca Roanhorse with Resistance Reborn, which Mark read us an excerpt.
It's good, guys.
I actually felt like I was in a tennis match. When you were reading, I was watching you, Mark, but then going back and forth to you, Rebecca, because you were really into it. And what was that like to hear your words being performed up here on stage? That was pretty cool.
Mildly terrifying.
For you?
No, but he did a great job. So it's surreal. This whole experience is just awesome, as you can imagine.
Awesome. Well, let's see. In my notes here, I have, please do not mention, okay, I won't mention that. Sorry.
Wait, no.
Okay, so Resistance Reborn is actually a major storytelling piece between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. And, no pressure. It's your first time writing a Star Wars book.
Yeah.
So what was that like?
Mildly terrifying. It was great. Lucasfilm folks give you so much support. Del Rey's there, to help you out. And they were like, tell your story. Bring your love of Star Wars to the page, and people will love it too.
So you mentioned your love of Star Wars because this book is really like a love letter to Star Wars. So, what was that like to bring back a lot of the characters that we know from previous books and comics and films and put them in the story?
Yeah, so we are rebuilding the Resistance. The Resistance is being reborn. So I wanted to bring a lot of the characters from the games, from the comics, old faces that maybe you haven't seen for a while, and some brand new characters all together with our heroes to do this thing. It was great. They gave me a lot of freedom to do that, and I went for it.
So now Poe, even though there's a lot of characters, Poe is like the heart of the story, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us about, or whatever you can, about Poe in the book.
Yeah, well, okay, so The Last Jedi, as we leave that, Poe has royally messed stuff up, we'll say, right? I'm sorry, I'm blanking.
First Order?
Mildly terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely, the whole time. His
Resistance.
when you go against Holdo, yes.
Yes.
And what is that called?
Reprimanded?
Mutiny.
Insubordination.
Yes, all this stuff. Thank you. So his
We
mutiny,
write books for a living. Words are hard, right?
You guys, there's a lot of people in this room. So his mutiny has gotten a lot of people killed. He is really messed up. And, he's carrying a lot of that shame, a lot of the mistakes that he's made. He went from sort of a cocky guy who's, talking smack to the First Order and thinks he's got everything under control to someone who got people killed. And it's sort of a serious thing. And we didn't want to just, wipe that slate clean and be like, oh, hey, he can just come back. He's a hero again. He's got to deal with that. He's got to build back trust. He's got to build back his own confidence in being a leader again. And he's got to find some forgiveness. I don't think that everyone is going to forget what he's done. But there's also not a lot of room in the Resistance to sit in the corner and feel sorry for yourself. Yeah. Things are happening, and he's got to step up and take command.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm really excited for more Poe. So,
And
and
he was awesome to write because of the hair.
So much hair.
So much hair. Actually, Justina, when I first started it, she was like, you have to put in the hair. So any of those hair scenes, you can credit her.
I would love to be a part of their group, like text chat, and what they're texting back and forth. Make sure you put this in. Okay, so Resistance Reborn comes out prior to the Last Jedi. Wow, The Rise of Skywalker. Tell us why we should make sure to read the book prior to The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, well, I think what I just said about Poe's journey, I think you're going to see a lot of that in the book. You're going to have scenes between Leia and Rey that you might not get otherwise. You've got a whole cast of characters, like I said, from the comic books and from the original trilogy and Black Squadron and all sorts of folks that you might not otherwise see.
Ooh, all right. Now, is there some information in the book that, unless you read it, you might miss something in the movie? Does that make sense? Okay, I wasn't. See, I went off script, y'all. So that's why they told me to stick to the script.
The next panel is all our lawyers.
They've even made my husband sign an NDA. We're under so many NDAs. Okay, well, Rebecca, congratulations. Make sure you guys read Resistance Reborn. I know I will, and I cannot wait. And I can't wait to find out more about Poe. Super excited. Okay, so Ethan.
Yes.
Allegiance. What can you tell us about it?
What can I tell you about it? Well, first of all, I just want to give a shout out. I do want to give a shout out because my editor is somewhere in the audience, Tom. Can you just raise your hand for a second? There he is. That's good. So he's very far away, so I can talk. Before
Ethan, I'm right here, though.
Matt's right there, though.
All right. Well, basically, Allegiance. So obviously, there's a significant amount of time between the end of The Last Jedi and the beginning of the new movie. So there is, we last left the Resistance, they were not in great shape. They were on the run, decimated. They've lost most of their fleet. So in this series, Princess Leia has a small, or sorry, General Leia. You can tell I'm 46 years. Sorry. I'm always a 4-year-old when I talk about Star Wars. So anyway, General Leia has taken a team with her, including Rey and Rose, to Mon Cala. That planet has been a good source of allies, you know, when she's needed help before. But so she's looking for help, basically. And then at the same time, we have Finn and Poe looking to replenish the supply of weapons. So they're on 2 separate missions, and I can't tell you anything else because I think Tom is moving towards the aisle. Right?
Well, tell us about how you felt when you were approached to write this, because it must have been really, really exciting.
It was. I mean, I always try to pretend to be professional, as you could tell. But like, I first saw this. I saw A New Hope in 1977 in a theater not that far from here in 44th Street in Times Square, and I must have seen the first movie well over 60 or 70 times. I've lost count, and it's just every time I hear that music, it's so special to me. And so, especially Leia, because that was, I got to meet Carrie Fisher. I was an entertainment journalist in a previous life, and just to be able to try to do justice to her in particular is very, very special to me.
Well, speaking of, it sounds like then you must have had fun writing scenes with General Leia in it, but what was your most fun scene to write, if you can tell us? Or what characters? I promise I'm not trying to trap you guys.
I've lost Tom.
He's under the table.
Don't worry.
He's low crawling up, yeah.
Okay, well, let me rephrase it this way. Okay. What characters' personalities were the most fun to write for?
I got to do a few scenes with Rey and Rose together, and
cool.
That was a dynamic I really liked.
Wow.
So yeah, I liked kind of giving Rose a little bit of an action beat as well. It was kind of fun.
Now, you had, okay, it says there's a massive like battle scene that you had to write for. So I guess that's one we can talk about. It says, in the first issue, we get to see the First Order in a massive display of power, and Rey, without a lightsaber, battling a new creature for the Star Wars galaxy. Now, both scenes have kind of like a widescreen epic action that we've come to expect from Star Wars. So what was it like writing that scene with such incredible scope?
Well, first of all, I was blessed with a very good artist, Luke Ross. So, it's a little, in comics, it's really a visual medium. So we lucked out to get him to work on this. So basically, when this story opens, Kylo Ren especially is angry. He's got some anger management.
Surprise! He woke up chipper.
Spoiler alert! I should not let that leave this room. So he's really wants to find Rey and the Resistance and just really hunt them down. So any planet that or any people that get in his way or maybe have extended aid to the Resistance, he just wants to make an example of them. So there's a very brutal opening to this where essentially there is this planet that's sort of been neutral throughout all the great battles in Star Wars history, and they make, they basically, anyone who comes, they offer, sort of, they're good hosts. So anyway, they basically get to see them wipe out these poor. So basically I introduce characters in 6 pages, a whole species, and then 6 pages later they're gone.
Yeah.
So.
You have a red shirt species.
Yes.
I love it. Well, so Star Wars Allegiance is coming out soon, right?
It's coming out, the first issue, it's a 4-issue series, and the first issue comes out next Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well, make sure to check it out next Wednesday. Round of applause for Ethan Sachs. Okay, next we have Kevin Shinnick. And Kevin, yes!
I'm a local guy.
You wrote Force Collector.
I did.
Now, Force Collector is a bit of a departure from Star Wars storytelling in the fact that it's about a character that we don't know much about, or he doesn't know much about the Jedi
Correct.
or the Empire.
So it's hard to imagine a world where Star Wars does not exist. Obviously, you look around you and it's everywhere. But for those of us, we still remember sometimes, this movie came out in May of '77. And I still remember maybe March or April of '77, this trailer coming out on television. And it blew my mind. And there were so many images, we all know them now, they're classic. But this is the first time we saw these things. And I tried to piece together what this movie was about based on these images. And the funny thing is, I thought, according to the trailer, this was about a bad guy in black who, kidnapped a princess. He kept her in this castle in the desert. And there were these sand creatures that protected that castle. Oh, wow. And that there was a guy, young boy, who went and saved her because when they showed that scene of them swinging across the chasm, I assumed they were exiting the castle, and that was the end of the movie.
Wow.
So obviously I was right in some ways and very, very wrong in other ways. But I want to go back and capture that excitement of piecing together Star Wars and not knowing exactly how things line up. So I pitched this story to these guys. Basically, Star Wars meets The Dead Zone, Stephen King's The Dead Zone, where there's a character that, our hero, Carr, who gets these massive headaches when he touches certain things. But these objects that he touches show him their past. And he doesn't know why. His family thinks he has like a brain tumor. And then his grandmother's like, I think you have the Force. I think you just don't know how to use it. And he's like, what's the Force? Who are the Jedi? This is all new to him. And she kind of explains what she knows, because on the Outer Rim, they don't know much. This takes place around Force Awakens and all after. And so he's like, well, great, show me these Jedi, and they can teach me how to do it. And she's kind of like, well, they're all dead. And he's like, well, how do I do this? And she's like, well, let life be your master. Go out and find objects that you think will show you a history of the Jedi and the Force, and that will be your tutorial. So it's kind of like looking for Rosebud and Citizen Kane and piecing together these things. And what I like about this is it's a story for people who, it's a standalone story with original characters, but every time he touches an object, we flash back to a famous scene or in a movie or a cartoon or a comic book or whatever it is. So in that regard, it's a book for people who know everything about Star Wars and a book for people who know nothing about Star Wars, because you're on that journey from one point of view or the other.
Now, so speaking of that, because I was excited to learn that you visit some locations from the Clone Wars. So what can you tell us about that?
Yes. What can I tell you about that? Well, let me tell you a funny story about Journey 2. When we write these things, in a lot of cases, we're writing them in a vacuum. We don't know what's coming until they let us know, and you're on a need-to-know basis and whatnot. So I'm writing this thing. You get it. You're sweating. You hand it in. You're like, great, I did it. And then right before the holidays, they called me and said, well, we have a problem we didn't foresee happening. And I was like, what? They said, somehow you inadvertently wrote a big section of episode 9. And I was like, well, clearly you've got me on the wrong gig. And we all laughed, and they said, and now you've got to rewrite it. So let's just say we pulled back a lot, but there is enough to the journey of episode 9. But yes, there's a lot in Clone Wars that we touch. I can't get into specifics, but we encapsulate the whole saga. From the movies to the animated series, the comic books, it's all in there in some way, shape, or form. So there are nods to a lot of people that I'm looking at.
Oh, I'm finding out spoilers too. Well, so obviously, if you kind of wrote a chunk that was in episode 9, a lot of your experience is writing for film and television. So what was it like making the transition into writing a novel?
It was really great because, my experience with Star Wars, and what's one of the things I love about Star Wars, we look around the room, the age range is universal. I've written adult Star Wars on the Robot Chicken Star Wars specials.
Yes.
We have a lot of fun doing that. I wrote a young version for my daughter. I wrote a picture book called Chewie and the Porgs, which was last year.
Yes.
And I also was on the animated series Star Wars Detours, which is out there. Yes. I want that in quotes on the DVD. Aww.
Hey, Disney Plus maybe?
Absolutely, it's a possibility. That's the thing. There's always, talk about A New Hope, there's always hope for that series. So to be asked to write this novel, this young adult novel, I was beside myself because it was another medium, and to reach out to really kind of another age range in the fact that, we call things young adult, we call things adult, but Star Wars is for everybody. And I think all the work we do up here is for everybody. So it was just taking it from a different point of view again. And I had a great time doing this novel.
Well, I can't wait to read it. You have sold me on it. I am super excited.
Well, good. That's one.
Yes.
Who else we got? I have to say, it comes out on November 19th, which is my wife's birthday, so we know what she's getting. Best wishes. Your husband.
Did you get to pick that release date?
No, I didn't. And she was so sick of me talking about this novel, and then I was like, guess when it comes out? And she's like...
Oh my gosh. Well, Kevin Shinnick, one more round of applause for Kevin. Now, Delilah Dawson. Round of applause for Delilah. I am a big fan. You wrote Black Spire, and oh my gosh, being a huge Disney Parks fan, I've been to now Batuu so many times. I have so many questions for you. But we got to meet Vi Marathi. So tell us what it was like writing for this new character.
So we brought Vi Marathi to life for Phasma. She is Leia's best resistance spy, and she is kind of the vehicle we use to tell Phasma's backstory. So if you haven't read Phasma, you definitely should, just because it'll give you a lot of backstory into Vi Marathi as well as some other characters that are in Black Spire. I did not know at the time that she would be a live person running around in the parks and a major character. They just said, could you use her in the park? And I'm like, yeah, sure, expecting that, she'd be like a on a wall freeze or something, and then you're walking around the park and she runs up to you and it's like when Big Bird finally found out that, Snuffleupagus showed up and everybody else in Sesame Street found out he was real. And Big Bird's like, I've been telling you all for years. So Vimerati is my Snuffleupagus. But I'll tell you, we were doing some recording in Batu East, which is what we call, the Orlando Galaxy's Edge. And they were doing a thing where Vi was supposed to come up to me and I was supposed to react to her and we would have an interaction. But every time she came up to me, I'd have like a full body frisson goosebump and she'd go, oh my God! And apparently you can't say God in Star Wars, so we kept having to reshoot until I finally said, oh my gosh. And I sounded like Goofy, but I can't get over it. Every time I meet her, I freak out.
Oh, that's so
Because
cool.
my delusions are real.
You actually got to go to the openings of both Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland and then Galaxy's Edge at Disney World. So what was that like to see these things that you wrote about literally come to life?
It is incredible. So much of the book was written based on a PDF dossier they sent me where, you couldn't really blow things up, but I had art, I had words, I had maps with words I couldn't quite read, so I had to be like, help me. So they sent me a map that was a ½ inch bigger, and I was like, no. So actually walking through it and seeing the places, it's incredible. There's so much detail, so much love in this place, so much depth. I taught myself Aurebesh so I could read all the signs.
Wow.
So that's cool. I know what everything says. I can tell you which things are dangerous and are thermal detonators and you shouldn't touch. I downloaded the app in the Disney Play app. There is a data pad that you can use to hack doors, talk to droids, see what's in crates, steal stuff. You can help the Resistance or the First Order. So yeah, it's a really immersive land. It's incredible. But I think the biggest thing that impressed me was when you read about Doc Ondar's Den of Antiquities, you're like, oh, that sounds cool. And then you walk in there and it's like that Charlie and the Chocolate Factory moment. I mean, you don't want to eat everything. That would be very bad for you. But just every square inch is something incredible. And so, I had read their description and then I described it based on their description. And then I saw it and I was like, I've got to rewrite all this. Because it's so cool. Like, there's a baby sarlacc in there. You can see what's in a sarlacc underground. And there's this Dianoga that Ethan and I really want to free because he needs more room. But yeah, it's if you haven't been, if you read Black Spire first, you'll be like that person who's the tourist who has read the tourist log. And you're like, I know where this is. Let me tell you what this is. And if you haven't read Black Spire yet, you should get it and read it in line for Rise of the Resistance. Because you're going to be there a long time.
Well, one thing I love about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is you walk in and, it's so immersive, but all of the people that live on Batuu, you're on Batuu, so I'm trying to keep the magic, not ruin the magic here. But, they talk to you as though you are literally on Batuu. And
well, they've each created their own character. They've done what we do. They have made themselves into a character. They'll tell you which village they live in, what they're into. I hear at first a lot of them wanted to be Han Solo's cousin, and they had to, put that on the kibosh, because it was you can't all be related to Han Solo.
Well, what I love about it is, these are just normal citizens, and they're not in the know on the Resistance and the First Order. So what was that like, writing for just the citizens of Batuu that aren't in the know on everything?
It was a super fun challenge because this is a thing we haven't necessarily seen in Star Wars yet. Black Spire, while also being, kind of I don't want to say a travelogue for Galaxy's Edge because it doesn't read like it's not like 1 star, Beanas, they were rude to me, but it tells you what you can get and where and which drinks are the very best, which is probably the Fuzzy Tauntaun. And, it tells you all these things, but then you also see the citizens who, they're on the edge of the galaxy, they're not all tuned in, they're not quite sure what they think about the Resistance, the First Order, if it's real, if it's not. You get to see, these people who have chosen to live outside of, Coruscant, seeing these things for the first time, but you also realize what it takes to make a normal citizen change from that's not my problem to this is my problem, and I may not be strong enough or smart enough or special. I don't have the force, but I'm willing to put my life on the line to fight for this thing I believe in. And so that's what the book is about, is that found family of the people that are willing to step up and say, I'm not strong enough, but I will do this anyway.
I love that. Now, leading up to the rise of Skywalker, I know you talked about it's important to her connection with Phasma, but why is it important to Vi's story and how it ties into the Resistance, and why our audience should make sure they read Black Spire?
So Vi Marati is a spy. She likes to do spy things. She's like a female James Bond, which means she usually works alone, doesn't trust people, and is kind of, there are walls. There are a lot of walls. Vi's an onion. And so as she comes out of Phasma, she's been tortured. She's physically hurt. She's in her 30s, so it's much like when James Bond in Skyfall, we suddenly saw that he was covered in scars and had to take uppers and downers all the time to function. Vi's not a young spring chicken. She has rode hard, and she's working hard, and she's a veteran with PTSD, and she's moving through this world. And Leia says, go to this planet with this person you kind of know who may or may not be your biggest enemy. You have this acerbic droid who's going to make your life hard. Take all of these supplies, build a resistance cell, recruit people, lead them. And she's like, that's not my job description. And then Leia says, it is. So, we see someone who is a war veteran who's damaged with PTSD trying to build this found family and to help fight the resistance. So this tells us why Vi's in Galaxy's Edge, why the First Order is on Galaxy's Edge, and towards the end of the book, we might find out what's leading into Rise of the Resistance. So if you want to be informed about why these things are happening, Vi is the key to it all. And also when you meet her there, you'll know what to talk to her about. Like, she will talk to you about the things in the books. If you ask her, about Cardinal or knitting, she's a very bad knitter. Don't insult it. But she loves to talk about knitting to you. And the great thing that I've been told, and I've seen in the parks, is like when people see Rey, you're kind of scared to talk to Rey. Like, she uses the Force. She's very kind of proper and special. And so the little kids especially don't want to talk to her. But Vi will run up to you and get on your level and be like, hey, I need you to go distract those bucket heads for me. And the little kids don't even think. They're like, oh my God, hey, Stormtrooper, you stink. And it's incredible because she's the heart of Batu, and she draws you in. And so reading the book, you find out why she's so important. And then when you go there and you see her, it's like seeing an old friend and also like your personal hero. And my Snuffleupagus.
Love it. Okay, last but very important question. Are you team green milk or team blue milk?
I like the green milk, non-alcoholic, and the blue milk with rum.
That's a great answer. I will tell you, I like the green frozen milk, but then go into Oga's and get the Bantha cookies, skip the blue milk in there, just get the Bantha cookies and mix it with the frozen green milk. It's my preference. Say Ahsoka sent you, and they'll give you the Bantha
We have a
cookies.
cooking panel right after this.
Okay. All right, yeah, I could do a whole panel about Star Wars food. We don't talk enough about it.
Did you see the porg mug in Oga's Cantina?
Yes.
So beautiful. And like all of the beer taps and the drink taps, like there are Rancor teeth, there are lightsabers. Like you just need to go spend like 4 hours there.
Yeah.
I just love they made a baby Sarlacc cute.
His little belly looks like a dragon.
All right, well, one more round of applause for Delilah Dawson. Now, Matt Martin, we go way back. You've switched offices many times, switched roles at Lucasfilms. I haven't been in your current office, but I want to know what your wall looks like, because you are in charge of connecting all of these stories and making sure they connect and make sense, and one goes into the other and characters. So how do you keep it all straight? And do you have a giant 6 degrees of separation thing on your wall?
I wish I did. That would be way cooler, but my wall is so covered in art typically that I don't have room for that, so it's mostly done on computer.
Which is probably safer.
I think so. Because then nobody can walk in,
Yeah.
or if the Star Wars show happens to be shooting, they don't accidentally catch it in the background.
So, but how hard is it though? I mean, do you just have it all locked away in here, or do you have to go back and check and say, oh, can we do that? Can we not?
Both. I have a lot of it up here, but I pretty much always double check because I don't have that much confidence in myself. So I want to make sure and double check that I'm right.
But we have confidence in you.
That's only because I'm double checking.
Oh, all right.
Well, and because you know that if you say the wrong thing, Twitter will dogpile you.
And that's why I'm scared.
Okay, so all of these stories connect, but how are they important to just the overall Star Wars storyline?
Sure. So this project was actually really cool. It kind of, we started on it forever ago, kind of right after Last Jedi, as development for Rise of Skywalker was beginning, before that movie even had a name. And Galaxy's Edge was also pretty far into development. So we actually kind of looked at it as one cohesive timeline, like we do with everything, but very specifically that kind of year or so between the films. So we're like, okay, we know we have this big event, which is Galaxy's Edge, and kind of the day that Batu happened. So if you're at the park, you're experiencing that day, which is roughly halfway through. So it was like, okay, so we need to come up with an entire story, across all of these different media channels that builds to Galaxy's Edge and then builds from Galaxy's Edge into Rise of Skywalker. So this is sort of a part of that. So we knew we had to obviously take the Resistance from being the, basically being able to fit into the Millennium Falcon and be big enough to, at least stand a chance against the First Order by Galaxy's Edge, and then, continue to grow into Rise of Skywalker. So it was basically just tracking all of these little things that needed to happen, including, Poe's arc, where they get all of their ships, what happens on Corellia, because we see Corellia in Galaxy's Edge. All of this stuff interconnected and then interwoven into this massive timeline, which then got broken down into each of these books that then all of these lovely people got to write.
Well, so obviously all these stories connect, but then some of them, are true standalone pieces. So, and actually this is a question for all of you. Do you give certain points and say, okay, this has to be exact because this connects to this? And then are you also told like, hey, yeah, this is a standalone piece. It's not going to be another story, and take it and run with it and make it your own. How do you go about that process?
I mean, we do generally want the creators to make it their own. So really, we're just kind of, we kind of work up a little log line, an idea of that roughly what sort of things need to happen in order to continue the overall flow. But when it comes down to it, they're the ones that really build the story and make it their own, and which is why they're able to kind of stand alone and be independent. So you don't have to read the entire thing. You can read just the things that you're interested in and still enjoy just that story.
I think you should read all of them, though.
I agree.
Yeah.
I do.
Well, so for the rest of our panelists, was there a moment, in each of your stories where once you got back the final version, you were like, oh, they kept that in. Oh my gosh.
All the references to Poe's hair. And then I made Rebecca add some.
I feel like I had specific notes about that.
Yeah, you did. He was
not in a derogatory way.
No. He was like, I like this. He's like, would it be curly or wavy?
More hair description, please.
Please.
I guess for me, it's kind of a very personal one. So the comic book series I did before this one was Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which also ties into to the.
It's part of that same big timeline.
And I co-created these criminals, I guess this criminal gang, and so I got to maybe explore them again. So it was kind of cool to see them interact with other. They don't really get along with anybody, so it's kind of cool for some other characters. So that was kind of fun for me.
That's really cool.
Well, since there was that fortunate crossover with episode 9, every time I got things back, I was like, please let me be able to use this. And then sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't, because, like I said, it covers the scope and it leads into this next movie. So you're just like, let's hold on and, And then it comes down to, which is funny, is like, not even personal opinion, but like, I don't think that gives anything away. And you'd be like, well, it does if you do this, but who's going to do that? Well, a reader would, come on. But thank God we have these guys because they're fantastic.
Good save at the end.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, anyone else?
So if you've read Phasma, I got to bring this character named Captain Cardinal to life. Thank you. All right. If you haven't read Phasma, you have to now. But yeah, so he was like Phasma's foil in the First Order. He was a good egg who thought the First Order was really, really good and was doing great work, and then he found out about the truth. But they let me bring him into Blackspire, which he's one of my all-time favorite characters. And I got to really just have a lot of wonderful moments with him, because Blackspire is a book about Galaxy's Edge, and it's also kind of a paean to heroes living with trauma who keep going, and then it's also like Brooklyn Nine-Nine in space. And they somehow let me do all of that and have a droid that just says like really rude things constantly. So it's win all around.
And Rebecca, what about you?
I have a scene where Poe and Finn have to get out of their flyboy outfits, and
I was going to say, are you going to say
steamy in
kiss,
kiss, kiss, kiss,
and wear suits?
Yeah, wear suits.
And Finn doesn't know how to tie a tie because, you know, he grew up as a stormtrooper, and Poe has to help him do that. And it was a really touching moment for me, and I'm surprised they let me keep it in. It's pretty cool.
That's really cool. Well, one more round of applause for Matt Martin. And I have to say, I'm so proud of Matt. Like I said, I have followed Matt's career since 2008. And to watch him just do everything he's done and work on StarWars.com and now part of the story group, I'm such a proud friend. You're doing such cool things. Okay, I have to say, Mark Thompson, when I first met you, I think I must have said like, oh my gosh, you're so good. Because when I had the true honor of narrating the Ahsoka audiobook by E.K. Johnston. Is E.K. in here?
She was awesome.
Oh, man. Well, check that book out, too. So you guys, the fans, were kind enough to say, hey, Ashley Eckstein should narrate that. And I was like, sure. And then when they called and they're like, okay, you have to do every single character in the whole book. And I'm like, wait, excuse me? You mean Darth Maul and Bail Organa? And then I listened to Mark, and I mean, you are the true master.
Oh, wow.
And what you do is incredible. And trust me, I sat for 40 hours or like in the studio. I was so bad when I was recording the Ahsoka audiobook. Like we had to do so many takes. It's so hard, you guys. So what you do, you make it look easy and it's not. But yes.
Wow.
He's incredible. So, I mean, I guess, how do you make the magic happen, Mark? Because it's awesome.
Well, that means a lot coming from you, so thank you very much for saying all that. I guess like my general process is I'll read the book, good to start that way, and then I write down, anytime like a character speaks or anytime there's dialogue, I'll write down like a character's name and anything that these amazing authors have given me as clues about like, you know, what species are they, what personality traits they have, anything that might give me a hint of how they might sound. And I'll write that stuff down. And then I go back and I like cast it, and I'll go through all those little descriptions that I wrote down and try to come up with a voice for each of them, and I'll record it on my phone. And then when I go in the booth, I'll like really quickly listen to a short clip of an idea I came up with, and then Kevin and Nick and different people will say, yeah, let's do that, or no, that might be too confusing when they meet this character later on, so let's pick something different, and we'll try to match, come up with all the voices so that you can really keep track of who's speaking to who and what character's talking at each time. And then I'll just listen to it, roll right in, and then usually around day 3 or day 4, I can start to know them well enough that I can just start to ping pong back and forth. But it definitely takes a bit to ramp up into that and kind of prepare. So.
It's incredible. Now, how did you get started in recording the Star Wars audiobooks?
It was really cool because like I always embarrassed to say this in front of authors, but I wasn't much of a reader. So like, I know, like, evil.
I mean, you're
I was
making
playing
up
video
for it
games.
now.
Get him, gang. So I didn't really read books. So my agent called and was like, hey, have you ever done an audiobook? And I didn't want to read a book, so I was like, no, not really. No. And then she was like, well, would you want to do a Star Wars audiobook? I was like, wait, hold on. Yes, please. So then I think it was the Legacy of the Force series was the first thing I got to do. And I wasn't familiar with audiobooks. I wasn't a big reader, so I really studied the audition that they gave me, and just, I worked really, really hard on it, and I was praying about it. I was just like, please let me get this. And so I went in, and I always say that I think I got cast because I come from an animation background, so I do more character voices and things like that. So I think I got cast because I could do the voices, but then I really had to learn the art of telling the story and making the prose, come to life, and the descriptions of rooms. The walls were gray, there were 4 of them, and like all that stuff that I just kind of want to skip over that stuff and let's just get to the scene, the talking, but that stuff's important because it says something about what the character feels about that space and what, so I had to learn all that stuff, and my director, Kevin Thompson, is just really, really good at this. He's done so many of these audiobooks, and
Kevin's amazing.
he's a master at just, coaching me and helping me figure out too much, too little, more of this, little of that, and so he kind of helped me get to develop that skill, and I'm so grateful that he did, because I'm so happy that I get to be a part of this. It's really a dream come true.
And so you have 2 audiobooks that are about to release, right? It's Resistance Reborn?
Yes.
And then Spark of the Resistance, right? That are upcoming, or
I didn't do
even more?
Spark, but I did do Resistance Reborn, and
Okay.
Rebecca really did an amazing job, you guys. It's like it's so cool to get inside Poe's head and really understand how he wrestles with the consequences of that decision. And it's a really great read, and there's some great character moments throughout the whole thing. So.
And I love reading it and listening to it at the same time, actually. It's really cool. Okay, so we only have a couple minutes left. I want to go down the panel here and just give, a quick piece of advice. I mean, you all have such incredible careers. I think we probably have a lot of writers out here in the audience. I know it's more of a quick, but a soundbite, but what's one piece of advice you could each give?
Drink water, change your socks.
Dream big.
And as tacky as it is, never give up. I started this as a second career for me. I was a journalist for a long time, and I started, I think, 43 years old, so it's never too late.
Just keep writing, because that opportunity will come by your way, and you want to be ready for it. So even though only your family's reading it, your friends, it's a start, and then just keep on, and you'll have a whole archive of things. So when you do have that opportunity, you'll be like, well, I happen to have these 80,000 projects.
If you start writing, and just remember that all first drafts are garbage, but you can fix a blank page and you can fix a piece of garbage. Read On Writing by Stephen King, and you'll see one of his first drafts, and you'll go, oh, I'm not so bad. Because they get better.
This is always so hard for me. I'd say give your all to everything you're doing work-related, because some of your work will not be fun, but I'd say I got pretty much everywhere that I've got just by working really, really hard and getting recognized for it.
That's cool. And I'd say learn from other people, but don't feel like you have to be other people. Like, what makes you is so unique and special, and that's really what's going to make you valuable to whatever you do. So don't be afraid to be yourself.
All of this is amazing advice. And I will say, I'm going to practice it. You will go read all of these titles before The Rise of Skywalker. Let's have one more round of applause for Justina, Rebecca,